Were you deceived too? Since childhood, they sold you the idea that your life should fit into a single word: doctor, engineer, teacher. But what if that label, that promised security, is the greatest lie of the 21st century? The truth is, the more you specialize, the more obsolete you become. Because the world no longer rewards those who master one game, but those who invent new ones. While artificial intelligence swallows entire careers, a new kind of mind is emerging, one that mixes philosophy with technology, art with science, chaos with logic. People who don't fit into anything, because they were made to create. At some point in history, the ideal of success was reduced to a rigid image: someone who masters a single field with absolute expertise. The more technical, the more valued; the more specialized, the safer. This narrative became so deeply rooted in our culture that we started measuring our worth by the degree of specialization we could achieve. But what if this is just a narrow slice of reality? What if we are trapped in an outdated idea of what it really means to succeed in life? This glorification of the specialist has roots in the industrial model, where efficiency was everything. The ideal worker was the one who perfectly repeated the same gesture day after day. The world wanted specialists because the system needed predictable gears. But the world has changed. We keep pushing young people into narrow paths, as if the certainty of the path were more important than discovery. And when someone dares to go off script, they are seen as indecisive, immature, or unfocused. Maybe you have felt this firsthand. In a family conversation where, upon saying you are studying several things at once, someone makes a comment disguised as advice: you need to choose just one thing and dedicate yourself to it. Or at work, where your ability to handle multiple areas is ignored because your title says you should only perform one function. The feeling is that you're always justifying your curiosity. But is it really a lack of focus, or simply a sensitivity to the complexity of life? Not all knowledge can be fragmented. There are human questions, like the meaning of existence, building healthy relationships, the balance between reason and emotion, that require a broader vision. And that's where the generalist starts to reveal themselves, not as someone superficial, but as someone capable of navigating between worlds. French philosopher Edgar Morin warned about the mutilated thinking of hyperspecialization. For him, isolating knowledge is mutilating reality. A specialist may deeply understand how a machine works, but not know how their work impacts society or the emotions of those around them. Meanwhile, a generalist, with their networked mind, perceives implications, anticipates movements, and connects previously invisible points. Therefore, it is necessary to question: isn't our obsession with a single path producing anxious, frustrated, and often obsolete professionals? How many people do you know who graduated in something, became excellent at what they do, and yet still feel empty? Maybe because following the path you were told was right is not the same as following your own path. The version of success that was sold to us excludes nuances. It does not accommodate transitions, uncertainties, or changes of course. And this makes many feel inadequate for not fitting into a model that was never designed to embrace the diversity of human talents. Instead of seeking the perfect fit, perhaps we should explore what makes us versatile, multiple, unpredictable. Because in a constantly changing world, the real advantage may lie precisely in not being overly molded. It is in this mismatch, in this rebellion against the hyperspecialization model, that a new power begins to emerge. One that is not measured by depth in a single point, but by the ability to move through many and connect them with purpose. For a long time, generalists were seen as peripheral figures, those who know a little about everything but master nothing. The phrase, "jack of all trades, master of none," was used almost as a subtle insult, as if multiplicity were a sign of superficiality. But times have changed, and quietly, the world has started to reward precisely those who move easily between areas, ideas, and languages. The rise of the generalist is happening, but many have yet to realize it. We live in an era where knowledge fragments and reinvents itself every day. The specialist often dives so deep into their bubble that they lose sight of the whole. Meanwhile, the generalist, by maintaining broad listening and continuous curiosity, becomes a living bridge between fields that normally don't interact. And it is in this intersection that innovation lives. Think about the world of technology. How many professions have emerged in the past 10 years that didn't exist before? Digital community managers, multi-platform content creators, branding strategists with an analytical vision. None of these roles fit perfectly into a single academic box. They require someone who knows how to navigate design, behavior, algorithms, communication, and psychology. And there is still an issue many ignore: the vulnerability of hyperspecialists in the face of automation. What can be replicated by an algorithm will be. The more technical and repetitive your domain, the greater the chance of being replaced. But the generalist, with their adaptability, reinvents themselves where the system still cannot predict. That's why figures once seen as secondary are now occupying leadership spaces. The generalist doesn't do everything alone, but understands enough about each area to integrate, guide, provoke. They are not the best technician in everything, but they are the one who sees the dance of the pieces on the board. Maybe you've experienced this, that feeling that you can understand a little bit of everything but don't have a clear label. And instead of limiting you, this allows you to circulate through different environments, talk to people from various profiles, and create unlikely connections. And if before this seemed like a disadvantage, today it's a rare advantage because most are still trying to specialize more, while the future demands the opposite. It's not about dismissing the specialist, but about understanding that the world urgently needs those who can see the big picture, someone who can connect the dots. Imagine a puzzle where each piece represents a field of knowledge. The specialist dedicates themselves to understanding a single piece with almost surgical precision. The generalist, however, they don't ignore the pieces but look at the bigger picture. They know that no matter how perfect one part is, it loses its meaning if it doesn't interact with the whole. They don't just want to understand the mechanism. They want to know why it matters. This is the strength of the generalist, the ability to cross territories, to build bridges between ideas that at first glance seem to have no connection at all. But it is precisely in this unlikely connection that revolutions happen. Breakthroughs are not born from the predictable. They arise when someone dares to unite what no one ever thought to combine. Think of Leonardo da Vinci. He wasn't just a brilliant artist. He studied anatomy, engineering, optics. It was by crossing science and art that he created works that have endured for centuries. Or Steve Jobs, who never wrote a single line of code but united technology, design, and human intuition to create products that transformed culture. Jim Simons, a mathematician who ignored the financial market until he used it as a laboratory to apply complex formulas. And Elon Musk, who mixes physics, business, risk psychology, and science fiction to move billions. But we don't need to go that far. Think about your daily life. How many times have you had a new idea while doing something completely unrelated to the original problem? a work conflict resolution that emerged during a random conversation with a friend, a career strategy inspired by a movie or a book that had nothing to do with your field. These moments are not accidents. They are effects of a mind that moves between worlds. And this is precisely what makes the generalist a key piece in today's world. While many isolate themselves in bubbles of specialization, the generalist is the only one capable of seeing the entire board. They anticipate trends, perceive social patterns, connect the technical to the emotional, the logical to the symbolic. But this power requires courage, because the world still rewards those who are isolally labeled. What are you? They ask, as if it were mandatory to be just one thing. Saying that you like to write code, start businesses, care for people, and study philosophy sounds like confusion, when in fact it is richness. While the specialist digs deeper into the same spot, the generalist explores new directions. They are not stuck on a single path. They blaze trails, see possibilities where no one else is looking. And in a world where certainties collapse one after another, perhaps what we need most is precisely this: people capable of finding paths where there are only walls. It's easy to think this is just a beautiful theory until you observe what's actually happening in the real world. What once seemed like a mere trend now reveals itself in full movement. Generalists are winning, and not just winning in the superficial sense of visible success, but dominating previously inaccessible spaces, redesigning careers, creating lasting impact. Take the case of Mr. Beast, one of the biggest content creators today. Behind the entertainment aesthetics, something much more complex is happening. Jimmy Donaldson is not just a YouTuber. He is a strategist, manager, communicator, systems thinker, team leader, data analyst. He built his digital empire not by mastering only one aspect of creation, but by moving intelligently and humbly between several areas. More than an isolated talent, he cultivated an ecosystem and knew how to orchestrate it. But perhaps the most powerful point lies in how he grew, alongside other creators who gathered, tested, learned from each other's mistakes, and shared everything. It was almost a collective generalist laboratory. There was no technical guru, but open, curious minds always crossing experiences. And this isn't exclusive to entertainment. Look at professionals leading tech teams. A good product manager, for example, doesn't need to code like an engineer or design like a designer. But they need to understand enough of both to create vision, build alignment, and generate innovation. This professional is, in essence, a generalist. And that's exactly why they become indispensable. Even in the world of art or science, the pattern repeats itself. Think of people you admire, entrepreneurs, thinkers, leaders. Almost all of them master the ability to navigate between worlds. They are not limited to pure technique. They are people who can mix intuition with structure, vision with execution, sensitivity with strategy. And why does this work? Because the generalist doesn't compete in the same game. They change the game. While specialists fight for space in increasingly narrow niches, the generalist creates a new territory. They are the glue between distinct talents. They are the link between creativity and method. They are the ones who see the gaps no one wants to occupy and turn those gaps into opportunities. How many times have you felt that you had diverse talents but didn't know how to use them together? Maybe the secret isn't choosing between them, but understanding how all of them can work together. And if the market still doesn't fully understand this, don't worry, it is already changing. Little by little, the most valued positions will not be those with the most technical descriptions, but those that require broad vision, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and adaptability. Being a generalist is not the same as being scattered. This is one of the biggest misconceptions. The generalist mind, contrary to what many think, does not jump from one interest to another out of boredom. It seeks patterns, builds meaning, articulates knowledge, and it does so with focus, but a dynamic focus, not a static one. The good news is that this mindset can be cultivated, and it starts with an essential quality: curiosity. Not the kind that consumes everything superficially, but the kind that investigates, the kind that dives deep enough to understand the essence and then continues connecting it with other essences. It's the famous knowing enough to converse with specialists, but also knowing when to listen. This requires humility. The generalist knows they will never know everything, and because of that, they learn more. They don't try to beat specialists in their own domains, but create connections between them, and that makes them a natural leader. Because those who listen well and connect ideas guide teams, projects, and even cultures more smoothly. In your daily life, this can start simply. Begin by observing the topics that spark your interest, even if they seem disconnected. Write them down. Explore readings outside your niche. Mix philosophy with business, art with technology, spirituality with neuroscience. The point isn't to become an expert in everything, but to broaden your field of vision. Another practice: develop transversal skills, those that work in any area. Communication, empathy, active listening, strategic thinking, creativity. These are the keys that unlock doors in any field. They are what allow you to sit at the table with specialists from different areas and not only understand but contribute. Moreover, adopt an experimentation mindset. The generalist is driven by tested action, not just accumulated theory. They build their repertoire by doing. Side projects, collaborations, hobbies that challenge your usual logic. All of these feed your network of references and strengthen your adaptability. And here's a tip. Instead of trying to find your place, start building your ecosystem. An internal and external space where your diverse interests coexist in harmony. A true generalist doesn't eliminate parts of themselves, they integrate them. They transform what would be seen as divergence into identity. Perhaps the most important point is, don't rush to define yourself. The generalist doesn't arrive with all the answers ready. They move forward by asking better questions. And that's what makes them deeply relevant in chaotic times. They don't bring closed solutions, but unexpected paths. What brings us the most anguish is the feeling of being out of place, of having many interests but not knowing how to combine them, of feeling that there's something in us that doesn't fit the traditional logic of success. But this misfit is actually your true differential. We live in a time that demands elasticity. The specialist still has their value, but the world increasingly needs people who can navigate, translate, and combine. People who look at a problem through multiple lenses, who perceive nuances, who don't just execute but understand the why behind each decision. Being a generalist is cultivating a rare form of intelligence, the ability to make connections in a disconnected world. And this ability is not learned through a single course, nor is it limited to one profession. It is built through listening, reading, living with different realities, through the courage to sustain doubt and move forward even without all the guarantees. If you feel that you have many layers within you, celebrate it. The world is becoming increasingly chaotic, and it will be the broad minds that will be able to chart paths. Take care of your curiosity, value your breadth, turn your way of seeing the world into strength. If you enjoyed this content and want to understand more about life's questions, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who is also one of the awakened.